I feel like, in a way, the trees were speaking to me. Oh, I see now, Floor said. You, the Lorex, you speak for the trees.
The trees can't be harmed if the Lorexes are.
Hello, friends. Trace amounts of science. Today we are getting into some science indeed with some Erowid trip reports. 46-year-old man, it's his first time meeting Uncle Sid, and yeah, things kind of go off the rails. It's pretty cool to watch unfold, so I wanted to share it with you guys. We've done one episode previously, which I also had a good time with. If you like this content, then maybe go check that out. And as always, I'd like to state that we don't condone any of these actions or activities. This is purely for scientific purposes, okay? So let's get into this thing, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. First time mind detergent use at age 46. An interest in heavenly blue. I first developed an interest in trying green wedge, I think, when I was reading the James Gleick biography of physicist Richard Feynman. While Feynman's biography mentioned that everyone around him was trying it while it was legal, Feynman mentioned that he would never try it because the risk to his brain, which was what his entire career had been based upon, was far too great. However, Gleick mentioned that Feynman had actually tried it, but he kept it secret once microdots were banned in the US, thinking that his employer, Caltech, might frown upon something like that. Yeah, I mean, I think it is a federal offense. Then again, what isn't these days, right? Then I read the Steve Jobs biography, where it was mentioned again, and an article on Cary Grant trying it made its way onto my reading list. Tim Ferriss and Sam Harris mentioned it in separate blog posts, trying it for brain power and spiritual experimentation. Yeah, I don't know how much brain power you really get out of it. I mean, in some ways, yes, whoa, amazing, but also it's like putting rocket fuel in a Volvo, man. The human body's not ready for that.
Tried him once, big mistake. Things got way too real. Holy crap, I am freaking out.
You might blow the engine. And when I saw that the writer of the book that became the film Limitless with Bradley Cooper had based his book and his fictional pill NZT on the book Storming Heaven, Lima Sierra Delta, The American Dream by Jay Stevens, I made the decision to try it, if at all possible. If I hadn't tried it before, I don't know if I could make the decision at 46 to do it. I'm not sure I'm ready to ever get on that ride again. But, I don't know, I kind of dig OP's vibe. He's down. He's a well-informed, distinguished older gentleman who wants to try illicit psychotropic substances. What? What's wrong with that? OP says, I turned 46 late last year, and I have never tried any sort of substance. I hadn't even tried alcohol until my 21st birthday, but I always had a fear of essentially any drugs. When I started dating a 31-year-old, Floor, who was a 3-time-per-day pot smoker, that's when I tried that for the first time, smoking and edibles. Floor mentioned that she could get me anything that I wanted to try, so I told her that I would love to try some lysergic acid. Pink witches, purple hearts, royal blues, sandos, tabs, teddy bears, Takatosa, tickets. And it is a ticket to the show. Anyway, then we broke up. Or Floor broke up with me because of our fights about money. And she went back to the rich, older, generous boyfriend, who was also married. So it was strange when she contacted me again to let me know that she had what I had expressed an interest for, in that she had 4 paper tabs and wanted to know when I had roughly 8 to 12 hours to book a trip. A trip to inner space. Wow. Unfortunately, as a single dad, I had my kid that weekend, so we scheduled the next weekend. No, not it's you got your kid, that's great. That is fortunate. Let's be grateful you want to be involved in his life, okay? Really tapped into something there for me. But anyway, Floor said that she would bring a trip sitter that she knew for safety's sake. She also told me that a guy she knew and had hooked up with was very jealous that she and I were going to experiment with this stuff, so this would be special. Are you really sure that's the chick that you want to trip with, though, dude? It seems like she's got a whole lot of baggage stuff going on back there, and you guys have a past, and I don't know, dude. Maybe you'll mend some fences, but maybe they'll be burnt to the ground irreparably. It can kind of go either way with these types of things, you know? Just depends where your headspace is. OP continues on, validates my point, and says, unfortunately, during my kid weekend, she had an oops, where the guy she used to hook up with came over with the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and they did the drug, and then they did the deed. Yeah, that's got a smart for you, doesn't it? Again, I say, is it worth all of this? I decided to search the darknet markets for what I could find as an alternate source. Unfortunately, that is right when the evolution/Bitcoin debacle happened, which scared me. Yeah, you probably just would have gotten scammed, paid up, and gotten nothing in return. Either that or the FBI knocks on your door, I mean.
FBI, open up!
Fingers crossed, right? So OP says, this is when I went back to Floor. She found out that her supplier ran out, so she's found another one. While on her way to pick up the goods, he was raided and arrested by the police, and she freaked out and went home. She spoke to a person who spoke to a person who was very knowledgeable about experimentation with pink panthers, and she got a source from him. So I mentioned that I had to be at Caltech on business at 2 p.m., so she said we'd start early. Early to me, meaning maybe like 6 a.m. She was running late by 10, finally arrived around 10:40, told me the story about her trip, which I think we finally dosed by 11 a.m. She pulled open the baggie, which had a strip of pre-marked and measured gel or gummy substance. Are you sure this is Uncle Sid? I'd never heard of dosage this way, only via liquid, paper tabs, sugar cubes, or via droppers onto gummy bears, etc. She said yes, and that her experimenting source said it was good. I have no idea the dosage, honestly, but we each had one measure of the gel, which quickly dissolved under the tongue and left no bad taste. And then comes the come-up. I put on some music while we waited for the substance to take effect. She mentioned that the last time she tried it, with the paper tabs, that she walked during the come-up, but she said, I'm not even sure that is what I thought it was. It might have had coke in it or something. I need to go smoke, Floor said, and she said to smoke some of the devil's lettuce. At some point, leaning against my sink, I noticed that my sink looked filthy, and I thought I had recently cleaned it. It was as though I was seeing 20 extra shades of gray in the stainless steel that I had never noticed before. Wow. Yeah, that's how you know it's hitting right. You never forget your first one, you know? I was at my dealer's house taking a piss, and the paint droplets started to roll down the wall, and I was like, oh, the ride is starting. OP says, you know what? Let's just get out of here. And then we went for a walk. I saw the yellow and blue shading in the leaves of the trees while we were walking, as never before. As mentioned, I'm 46, and I've gained weight. I'm out of shape, and walking, it felt like my heart rate was going through the roof. I was heating up, I had slight trouble breathing, and I mentioned as much to Floor. She said, I don't want to have to call an ambulance on you. I've already done that for 3 friends already. Dude, where are you getting this stuff? OP, are you still okay with this? It's a little too late to get off now, but Jesus. She's not your manic pixie dream girl, I guarantee that much. I think this is a different section titled Taking a Spill. Suddenly, playing a joke on her sounded like a good idea, so I went face down on the grass and didn't move, and predictably, yeah, she freaked out. Laughing, I got up. Your face is bleeding, she said. I reached up and felt a point where I had hit a root and I had a blood spot in the middle of my forehead. Just put a Band-Aid on it. Nobody will notice. Let's keep walking so no one stops and asks if you're okay. On we went to a sculpture garden with a pyramid, rocks, flowing water, lots of trees. There were patches of long flowing grass, and they seemed to be moving, bulging. And I'm not sure if that was the wind or the effects of the Big D. Yeah, probably a little bit of both. Let's just sit under the trees and watch the sparkling dew on the grass. Unfortunately, an old man with a fanny pack heard me say that and took the only bench in front of the grass, so we went and sat somewhere else. Fleur was suspicious. I wonder if that old man suspects something. Nah, I said. We're just like two art students admiring the sculpture garden. I sat on the bench next to her. We ended up lying on a stone bench head to head with our legs in opposite directions. Look at the wispy clouds. They look 3D, Fleur said. I couldn't see that. I expected the sky to look like colors or see trails when I moved my hand, but yeah, I didn't. I did, however, really want to walk around barefoot in the grass between a large group of trees that I had seen. The amazing different shades of green that I saw truly fascinated me, and so I went and entered a group of about 8 trees. This section, I speak with the trees. Walking barefoot through the grass, I felt drawn to one of the trees. It was a eucalyptus. Right away, I noticed that the knots in its bark made a face. Big deal, I told myself. You could find a face in anything, but staring at its bark, it seemed to be moving, breathing, bulging, and alive, and that fascinated me. I saw one patch of the bark in my vision stay still while the rest of the tree seemed to move. I tried to focus on the faces in the tree, but that didn't seem to do anything for me. I tried to feel the trees and the grass breathe with me, but that didn't seem to work either, so I focused on the moving bark once again. Then I heard a voice inside my mind say, "Look deeper." I looked around, and I looked up to the tree and to the new branches growing up on the higher branches. With my more sensitive vision to colors, I could clearly see how the trees became limbs, which became branches, which became smaller branches, which became leaves. And even from the leaves, there were the older leaves, which were turning a darker green and brown, and there were also younger leaves, growing a bright green at the end of the smaller branches. "Wow," I said audibly. The delicate dance, the rich tapestry of life, and that is just one tree. That's not like all of the ecosystems ever. It is amazing. It is humbling. Anyway, OP says, looking back at the tree, I realized that the look deeper comment made me realize that looking for eyes on the tree was superficial and silly. I felt like that might be akin to staring at a big pair of honker-donkers on a tree without seeing what they were attached to. There was a lot to see, but I had to put aside trying to make the trees look human or anthropomorphizing them. Yes, appreciate them for what they are. I like this. The trip's definitely getting heavier once you're having auditory hallucinations. So I looked at another tree, which was an oak, and yet another tree, which was a birch, and I saw how the oak, with its complex bark, was swirling, and how it faced another oak tree, which was smaller, and at the end of the grove was a large green tree with spikes. My mom always calls those a monkey puzzle, but I'm not sure what it's actually called. That tree had a grain that went sideways in rings, like fat rolls all around the tree, instead of the vertical grains of all the other trees. Every tree was different. "Look deeper," I heard again, and at that point I got a little freaked out and returned to Fleur on the bench. "I've been communing with the trees," I told her. "Well, let me guess," she said. "You're a tree hugger now?" "No," I said, "but I feel like, in a way, the trees were speaking to me." "Oh, I see now," Fleur said. "You're the Lorax. You speak for the trees."
The trees can't be harmed if the Lorexes are.
And this comment caused a giggling fit between the two of us for a rather long time. Eventually, OP comes out of the giggle fit and says, "But no, seriously, I did spend a long time with that eucalyptus. That tree is Australian, so that's not far from here, but chances are it was brought to this country between 1865 and 1880, when there was like this huge investment of eucalyptus trees and their rapid growth for farming purposes, and as a windbreak, I was trying to impress her with my knowledge of local flora." Oh yeah, real ace moves right there. Too smooth. He's got this one in the bag.
Calling simplistic objects by their scientific name ironically makes you seem less intelligent and more pompous. I know you're smart enough to be better than this.
So that tree's lonely because it's so far from home, she said. Maybe, I said. Come on, let me introduce you, I told Floor. So I pointed out what I had seen, about the grain of the tree and about how different they all were. I pointed out the spiky tree and how sharp the spikes were and how different that grain was. You know, they make military night vision goggles green because the human eye can distinguish more shades of green than any other color. Yeah, dude, she's getting wet now. She spent this time pricking her fingers on the spikes, and I returned to the eucalyptus. You're wrong, I heard a voice say inside my head. I'm not lonely, and I'm not far from home, and I'm definitely not different from the others. Of course you are, I thought. You're different, and I can tell by looking at you. I told you to look deeper, the tree said in my mind. We are all here, roots in the same soil, inspiring and expiring the same atmosphere, with the same sun shining on us. We're all drawing the same energy and nutrients. Look deeper. That made me gasp. The metaphor for all of us on Earth, all limited by what we do with the same resources, the air, sun, wind, water, minerals in the land, was suddenly super obvious to me. And I felt stupid for thinking how different everything was. I was part of the trees, and of the earth also. We all start with the same resources. Well, kinda maybe yes, but probably not really. Floor didn't like the way that the knots in the spiked tree was looking at her, and she said she wanted to jump and run, but instead she went and sat down again. When she did, I went over and hugged the eucalyptus. I was indeed a tree hugger. Yeah, I suppose there are worse things to be in this world, but not many. The fanny pack man left the throne area, so I went up there. I noticed that the dewdrops, which had made these beautiful hexagon colors when I walked by there previously, were now all dried up. I frowned. I walked around and noticed a granite round table and chairs, like a picnic table. The granite was alive, moving like it was a pool of water. All the individual dark grains in the granite seemed to be dancing, boiling, and yeah, this amazed me. As well it should. It's a novel experience, isn't it? This part is called Everything Has a Grain. Suddenly I recalled being 12 again. I had problems with my parents and was sent to live on a 500-acre ranch in rural Oregon. I started to think about how it was back then, and I was remembering being with a family that didn't know me that well. I hung out with a 20-year-old named Alan who was into cars and restored and painted rare cars to sell. I used to help him sand cars and paint them, and he told me the importance of following the contours of the car's line. Everything has a grain, he would say. Follow the grain. Petting Alan's German Shepherd back then, he saw me petting the dog in the reverse direction of its fur and said, I told you to follow the grain. Later on, when I got a summer job as a lumberjack in Oregon, I would follow them to the sawmill, and I learned about observing the sometimes twisted grains of the trees that we cut down, which we would then saw into lumber. Observing the grains of the tree and predicting how the tension would release as you cut into the tree and tried to make a tree fall a certain way was very important. The next summer, I helped a butcher shop with a field truck slaughter a few farm animals, including 3 cows, a pig, a goat, several lambs, and a bison. Again and again, the butcher tried to teach me a few things, and he said while I was cutting near the bones, follow the grain of the muscle. I had totally forgot about that, and it all came back to me in a flurry of memories, all connected and very vivid. Freaky shit, right? While Floor sat on the bench, I decided to jump up on a granite rock, which was rough in texture. I saw what looked like a security guard approaching and decided to go back over to Floor again. Doing so required that I jump off the rock, and looking down, it looked like the texture of the rock was like spikes, and the ground seemed about a mile away. Afraid I was going to break an ankle, I jumped anyway and landed safely. I was amazed at how, even though I felt like I was tripping balls, I still had an excellent sense of balance, was able to sit and stand, run, jump, walk without a problem. I mean, yeah, those are pretty inborn muscle functions, aren't they? I'll tell you something terribly cringe. Before I left for the Navy, Uncle Sid came to visit, and we had Super Smash Bros. Melee at the going away thing. And even though I was totally fried, my hands knew what they were doing. Like, I wouldn't even know where my character was on the screen. And apparently I'm still doing okay. It's really weird. Anyway, OP continues, I could feel, since it was now noon, how hot the ground was, and how burning hot the sun was. I walked over and could see that the security guard was actually a cleaning lady. I found myself telling Floor that I could see the granite in its igneous state, moving like lava, when she interrupted me. We are going to get the police called on us, or kicked out, Floor said. I don't think so, I said. For all anyone knows, we're just two art students exploring art and looking at the sculptures here. I don't want to stay here. Let's go, she said, and so we did. On the way out, I stared at the trees and smiled. Look deeper, I heard again. Suddenly, I realized that I was being superficial. I didn't have to spit out facts and science knowledge just to try and say something smart. It hit me that granite wasn't even an igneous rock. Oof. I was making connections that weren't even there instead of learning something deeper. And it made me start to cry. I mean, maybe part of that is the deeper thing that you're supposed to learn, no? Don't cry. It's okay. I hate to see a fat man cry. The carnival at the Performing Arts Center. Everybody loves a good carnival, don't they? Go in the mirror maze or whatever it is. Crossing the street, the plan was to walk through a modern art sculpture and then through the big mall nearby. But when we crossed the streets, the flags, sculptures, and signs outside the Performing Arts Center looked exactly like a very colorful carnival to me. Let's check out the carnival, I said. I could see an interesting round sign that was a mauve color or a faded red. It was a color that I had never seen before. Let me guess, you want to get some cotton candy and a balloon? We laughed. You think it's a funny joke until I actually do it. We stood in front of the Performing Arts Center as senior citizens filed past us and around us for the afternoon matinee of whatever play was showing. We were looking at the sky and the colorful yellow and blue sculptures, and also getting some very, very judgmental stares. One Japanese woman in her late 60s turned her head as she passed by and gave me a long stare, and I stared back. As I stared back at her, her face melted into a cartoonish Peter Max painting. It was about this point that I saw a security guard, who definitely was a security guard, walking straight towards us. We better go, I told Floor. While we were walking, I kept looking over my shoulder and saw the security guard following us. She followed us to the property limit, and then we crossed the street, and she turned around and went back to the Performing Arts Center. Jeez, what the fuck's up with all that? I have to come back tomorrow when I'm sober and ask. Leaving the property, I noticed a row of different trees, aspen trees. They had new sprouts and branches growing mid-trunk from the tree. It's a metaphor for layers of growth, I told Floor, and I remembered how there is somewhere in Aspen Grove, Pando, that's supposed to be all connected as one organism and sharing the same root system. I also noticed the building construction. You could see the texture and grains of the rolled stainless steel and the red sandstone used in the buildings very clearly. Every detail. And truly, it is sensory overload, but it's also pretty cool. My heart was racing again, and I felt like I was overheating, and I realized how red my eyes were from crying. Bro, you've been crying this whole time? That's why the security guard's chasing you out. She's like, you're weirding people out here. You can't just stand around here and cry. It's a happy place. You're ruining the carnival. This part is called Seeing My True Self in a Sports Bar. Oh, no. I was joking about the Hall of Mirrors thing. Don't look into a mirror. You don't want to do this to yourself. I guess he does. We stopped into a local sports bar to hydrate and cool down. I felt like all eyes were on us. I sat at the bar while Floor went into the bathroom. No one served us, so I moved to a corner table facing a window. Still, nobody served us, and I began to get paranoid. How long has Floor been in the bathroom? I wondered. Seemed like forever. Finally, a waitress came over and asked what I wanted to order. There's someone else coming, I said, but I'll have a Diet Coke and a water. I felt like I was sweating and red and overheating. She paused and looked at me for what felt like forever. Is that Pepsi okay? She finally said. Yeah, I replied. Where the hell was Floor? She was taking way too long. Maybe I needed to check on her. I was getting somewhat paranoid. Everyone was ignoring us rather than staring at us. I felt like I was overheating. I left my keys on the table and went to the restroom. Keys on the table? What, did you grow up in a high-trust society or something? And I paused in front of the women's room and couldn't bring myself to open the door and call Floor's name. Act normal. You haven't been doing a very good job so far. Although you did order the Pepsi without bungling it, which I am kind of impressed by. I guess I could handle a one-word exchange. Not a complicated conversation, though. Anyway, OP says, I went into the men's room instead, and I put some cold water on my face. I kept patting off the cold water until I felt like I was no longer overheating. I gave myself a long look in the mirror. My eyes weren't dilated like I thought they might be, but my hair looked so gray and wiry. You could see so many colors of gray, including in my hair and on my face. My face looked so wrinkly. My eyes were definitely red. Why did I think I looked so good for my age? I don't. I thought I had no gray in my hair, but there it is. I can see it. Everything has a grain, I thought. Especially my face. I'm so old. Look at my posture. Hunched over, my belly distended from fat. No wonder I've been having so many problems with getting dates lately. Ugh, I look horrible. Damn, that's too real, bro. But it's never too late to turn it around. That's what I want you to know. Anyway, OP says I went back to the table. Floor was still not there, but my Diet Pepsi and water were there, and I downed them quickly. Floor showed up, and I told her I was worried about her. I'm fine, she said, but I want to smoke. The waitress returned and took my Diet Pepsi, which was empty, away. She had a water and an ice cream sundae and laughed at nothing. I stared out the window, which had a screen on it, and the screen was filthy. It's a metaphor, I told Floor. Another one, she said. There's a lot of metaphors today, she said. Well, everything does have a grain, I told her, but this screen is a filter, and our filters get clogged up with a lot of stuff. Religion and education and stereotypes, and it keeps us from seeing the world clearly, like us trying to look out of this window. So what you're saying is we just need to give God some Windex for Christmas. On behalf of the birth of your son, here's some Windex. Please clean it. The filter's far too clogged. We need you to clean it. About this point, OP asked himself, why did the waitress take away my drink? Are we about to get kicked out? I was turning out to be the more paranoid one in here. I had kicked off my shoes and started to wonder if that was against the rules here. I mean, technically, yeah. Not very good manners either way. Floor said. Try this brownie ice cream sundae. I did, and it tasted super sweet and chemical-y to me. So did the Diet Pepsi, for that matter. Much more than I'd ever noticed before. Yeah, and then you drink something like water or orange juice, and it's just like, oh, it's filling me with such life. I love that. We weren't going to have any alcohol, and I didn't feel hungry at all, and I was cooling off, so I put my credit card on the table. The waitress refilled the water and Diet Pepsi again, and didn't take the card. I was getting paranoid about that. Maybe it was the fact that I didn't have any shoes. I'm sure they have a sign that says they can refuse service for no shoes or no shirt or no brain. I think we have a t-shirt like that over on my fourth wall. Go check it out. Thanks so much. I looked at the couple next to us at another table, sure that they were staring, but they weren't. However, the woman began to stare at me due to my staring at them. I noticed how gray her skin color was. She must be a smoker. While she faced me and looked at me, her face seemed to melt, and she looked almost like that old cartoon Droopy Dog character. Yes, I remember Droopy Dog.
You know what? I'm happy.
Your eyes are like yellow, like really yellow. You should get that checked out with a doctor, Fleur said to me. Leaving the high bar stools, getting my shoes on, calculating the tip, and leaving all seemed to be a challenge. Looking down at my feet, it looked like they were dangling a mile away, but we walked back and to my pool. The pool was crowded on this sunny day. Definitely the place to be. I just dipped my toes in the jacuzzi instead and saw dust enter the water. Ew, you didn't shower, you nasty. The fluorescent bathing suits, beach balls, the amazing shading of the trees made me feel like everything was brighter. I decided that I wanted to record my thoughts and regretted not bringing a journal. I tried to use the voice memo feature on my phone, but kept forgetting to press the button before and after speaking. I was starting each voice memo with hippie thoughts, and then my thought, but then suddenly obsessed on whether I should be calling them trippy thoughts instead. Hippie thoughts. We're all under the same tent. Hippie thoughts. When a bee stings someone else, it ends up harming themselves more. Hippie thoughts. We need to notice the details more. The subtle shading and not just the obvious of our lives more. Hippie thoughts. It doesn't matter whether you call them hippie thoughts or trippy thoughts, because, yeah, that's not a thing. You never really do get to take much away with you. When the trip is over, you get like a little trinket, a souvenir, but you won't be able to hold on to anything substantial. That would break the simulation. This section's called Divergence. Once we got home, I drank more water and noticed that I had definitely been sunburned. Fleur went to work smoking another bowl right away, and she started watching kaleidoscope videos on YouTube on my laptop. I wanted to listen to music and lie down, so I asked Fleur if she was okay with me not watching her and being alone, and then I put on a sleep mask, blindfold, headphones, and played Pandora and listened to music. The moment I closed my eyes, I saw patterns very clearly. On the perimeter of my vision, I saw lightning flashes, white and active, and in the center I saw a scanning electron black and white image of a grasshopper extremely close up. And I saw that the antennas on the grasshopper, which looked like hairs, had their own hairs/antennas, which in turn had their own hairs, and there were patterns going all the way down. The grasshopper image split into 2 and then 4, and then it turned into this beautiful geometric pattern with a dark, sparkling charcoal liquid mercury forming triangles and other geometric shapes spilling and flowing over a deep green pattern. I mean, you're definitely not going to be able to fall asleep, but yeah, good sound trip. I like this for sure. OP says, I thought back to that tree and looking up at the new bright green growth backlit by the sun. The tree had a branch which led to a leaf which supported a newer leaf. My son, who had just turned 10, was a green, growing new leaf. And it was the job, naturally, of the larger connected leaves to support the growth of the new leaves. That growth can happen naturally, if there's structure, but if the branch or leaf is broken at the right angle, well, it's not going to grow right. It might even reach tendrils to get nutrients and growth to another tree or branch or root underground. And I thought about my father, about how he hit me once, and I felt compassion for him. He always said that he didn't have the best parents. His grain grew as it did, and yeah, he was what he was. And I thought again about Alan and Oregon, taking on, in a way, the surrogate father role and teaching me about cars and life, and on not being judgmental, just guiding me on the right grains to follow when sanding a car along its lines. And of course I thought about my son. It suddenly became super important for me to make sure that I offered guidance to my son, and that he grew with my assistance straight and narrow without veering off into something damaging. Yeah, we do the best we can with that. Sometimes they manage to. But as a father, yes, you do the best you can. My kids didn't exist at all when I was tripping. That sort of trips me out. I could feel a duty as elders to guide my young son and show him the dangers and the ways to grow up safe and happy. I wanted to expose my son to good things and feed the good things inside him correctly, and to show him that all the boom boom and the crap talk of society is not all there is. All the marketing that he has been and will be exposed to is not all there is. Well, you're fighting back against the Matrix right now is what you're doing. I started to cry at this point, fairly uncontrollably. I cried for the damaged relationship with my dad, who was in a great marriage with my mom and was a great provider and so smart and a world traveler, but he worked too hard and he was never around. And I cried for my son, who I worry about and just want him to grow up self-actualized and happy and independent. And here I was noticing every detail of the moment, and I was not taking in every moment of my son as he went through his childhood. Damn, dude, this one's cutting me deep, too. They grow up so fast, dude. My little 2-year-old, he's not a baby anymore. Full-blown toddler. He's giant. It's so hard to carry him around, but I still want to do it because he's my little guy. You're touching me real deep right now is what I'm trying to say. Oh, I know what this is. This is my brain pattern doing, and then I was stuck. I had this overwhelming feeling that I didn't really know what was going on. It was humbling. I always wanted to insert a scientific answer into something, but this was way out of my normal experience. I found myself saying over and over again in my head, I don't know shit. I don't know a goddamn thing. I know nothing. Musical adventures is the next section. Then the Pandora station changed to a Rihanna song. What the fuck? Rihanna? I thought for sure I had selected a chill-out/lounge music station before the trip even started. This song should not be playing. But I went with it. The patterns and lights in my brain and the lightning electricity made colorful disco patterns. I could hear every detail of the music. When Rihanna took a breath to sing the next line of the verse, I could hear the air passing through her larynx. Even air has a grain, I thought. I bet if she had a bump or a polyp in her breathing tract, you could hear that in the music as the air passed over it. That is a really trippy thought, and now I'm conscious of my breathing. Thank you so much. Now everybody is. But only for a second. Your brain's bored by it. It's not going to think about it for long. The next song was some singer from Iceland singing in Icelandic. Couldn't tell what the words were at first, but I concentrated on the emotions. My brain thought I was hearing the words, but that wasn't possible. I thought about how birds have a certain number of songs used to communicate, and how humans have sort of the same patterns. You think about two women laughing and making a joke, and you know what they're communicating as far as emotion, without the specific joke details. Or a couple who's about to lay down and make sweet, passionate love by the fireside, and the woman or man says something like, "Oh yeah," or "da," or "we," or "see." And you sort of just know what that conveys. Or when a younger dude says, "dude," in a certain tone of voice. Or a young woman says, "ugh, whatever," in a certain tone of voice. The song and context lets you really figure out anything. The details almost aren't important. That is true. Like, so much of the Tagalog that I learned was just from watching other people talk. If you listen for long enough, eventually you'll put it together. All language really is this way. It's just one flow of grain to try and express concepts, thoughts, especially emotions. Like the songbirds, we express emotions, and language does get in the way of that sometimes. Next song's an old woman singing in Spanish to a slow tango song. I can hear the age just from her voice. and I can especially pick up on her Argentinian accent, since I'm very familiar with Latin American Spanish and Castilian Spanish. I can especially tell that she's a smoker. My trip partner fights with her partner is the next section. See, you're having this nice little sound trip, everything's alright, and then the drama. The drama starts. I'm getting restless. I can hear Floor on the telephone fighting with someone after she's been in the bathroom for a long time, and the fighting is bugging me. Bro, I told you, you bring the drama llama over to your house, this is what happens.
But first, a deep sip from a very tall glass of I told you so.
He probably knows, but she's his plug, so what are you gonna do, right? I'm checking on you, I tell her. She's smoked several bowls. Yeah, my boyfriend's freaking out. He thinks I'm over here doing substances with you and that you and I are banging it out, and I told him that we're not banging. I feel like this is where our trips are definitely diverging. Suddenly, I feel compassionate toward Floor. I was worried about having a bad trip with her since she likes to fight with me and she can be condescending and insulting, and we had a dating relationship, but I saw her as she was just then, dealing with a certain amount of anxiety, trying to feed it with the devil's lettuce, and dealing with her financial issues. Yes, an imperfect human just like me, but it's not my job to fix it. Exploring the dimensions that really matter is our next section. I really wanted to draw, and I drew a detailed pen and ink version of the tree branches and color shades that were stuck in my mind. And then I drew a version of the cartoon senior citizen that turned into a Peter Max painting at the Performing Arts Center. Oh, you had the pop art, huh? That's cool. I went into the room, onto my bed, and put my blindfold and earphones in again, and I started to see long string patterns of hexagons, pentagons, squares, stretching diagonally in my vision. All of the repeating patterns I had observed in nature made me realize that things repeat over and over again. I thought about how much Floor looked like my first girlfriend over 20 years ago, and I realized that maybe there were only so many ways to make hands, or arms, or faces. Are there other dimensions, I wondered, while looking at squares stretched out behind my own eyelids. Maybe, the answer said. Why does it matter? You're here, in this dimension. Time is also a dimension, and all you have is the here and now. And a bright pinpoint of light centered itself in between the long string of squares, and I realized that we are only here for a short time, and I have already wasted half of my life. I mean, wasted is a little bit of an overstatement. Surely you've done something, right? You had a kid, as far as I remember. That's your genetic purpose served. You can lay down and die now. I thought about the lines, the tree grains on my face again, and for too long, I fed my body and my tree bark, if you will, processed foods and alcohol and sun exposure, including today. All I have is this moment. I'll be 50 in another 4 years, and I need to learn then how to be good at being a 50-year-old. For now, I need to learn how to be a good 46-year-old, and that means bonding and learning from those that are my age. I realize that I can learn from the best people at my age, and the best in people younger than me, and certainly the best in those that have aged above me. Everybody wants to teach you something, and has something to share with you that will teach you what you need to learn. Hippie thoughts? Don't do, except do. Be the best you at your age that you can. That is 100% right. I can't say where the awakening for that came from, but it could have been Uncle Sid. I don't know. We talked a few times. The conversation's always lasted a little too long, but yeah, you do come away with some sort of message. The next section is called Compassion for Those That Have Hurt Me. Wow. I started to cry again. I thought about a woman that really hurt me 15 years ago, and how year after year, I wondered how I'd ever get through all that hurt. And I was amazed that it still hurts, and that I still think about it all the time. And it seemed pretty easy to forgive her and move on. She must be older now, maybe wiser. What about my ex-wife? I thought about her. We had a nasty divorce, and I hated much about her actions from before and after I filed for divorce. But it seemed easy to see her as a young girl in her 20s, in love with me and not knowing what to do with my business and my crazy life and just wanting to be a good mother and wife. And I had so much compassion for her. Yeah, she's on the same ride, man. She's trying to get it figured out too. However, I think you can feel some sort of compassion while also deeply disliking a person. I hope your life goes well, just away from me. Whatever you're doing, that's great. Just keep it way the hell over there. OP says, well, why am I crying so much? This is not fun. It's probably cathartic, but definitely not fun. Bro, you thought window pane was fun? I don't know who told you that. You've been severely misinformed on that front. It's maybe fun for the first hour or two, but guess what? You got 10 more to go. And it turns into just like this grinding slog. Oh, that's the reason that I'm not eager to ever revisit it again. Anyways, OP titled this section, Lessons Learned About Money. But wait, I thought, what about money? I was supposed to think and meditate on my business during this trip, try to figure out what I should be doing with my life and what I could do to improve my cash flow and merge my passions and areas of skill and change my business to fit all that somehow. Money has a flow also, the thought came to me. It grows along certain grains with certain patterns. And suddenly I realized something. Money is just a way to exchange something for someone else that a person paying is looking for. I mean, yeah, that sounds obvious. We all know money is a unit of exchange, but my focus was on what the person paying is looking for. And suddenly it hit me that many of my clients are looking for the same thing, a positive result from a difficult situation. But some are looking for other things, like reassurance that they're a good person, or education about the process, or confirmation that they're not going to be ripped off. Someone to take care of something for them, guide them through a difficult time, or, in general, goods or services. And what they're really paying me that money for is for that feeling or guidance or getting what they had in mind that they wanted. Yeah, it does seem so easy and straightforward when you're tripping, and then you try and take that information into the real world, and you're like, I still don't know what the hell people want. It's the same story with YouTube videos. You make them every day, and I know what performs well, but what's really going to blow up? What's really going to speak to the masses? I have no idea. So eventually I just have to, start making a few things for myself, like this video in particular. OP continues, I realize that with my business, I do so many things that get in the way of that simple exchange. People want to pay me money to take care of their difficult situation, but I made sure that I only return phone calls twice a day so that I don't get overwhelmed all day. And then I require an in-person appointment to size them up and a written contract, of course, with much legalese. And then they must pay via cashier's check or money order or Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, etc. As you can tell by this report, I love to write, and I probably use many more words than are actually needed. I used to write a custom-drafted 30-page memorandum to each client, letting them know about the pros and cons of each choice that we had to make while I was handling their matter, and the probability of success of each option, and my recommended strategy. And after spending hours on that, I used to find that most clients never read it. Or they skipped to the last paragraph that just said, conclusions. Did they not see how many hours I had spent analyzing their matter? Were they stupid? Were they not impressed by my education and vocabulary and great writing skills? Well, you need to put a cork in that real quick. The writing's passable. Maybe bordering on good. But great? We got a ways to go. Just a little check for the ego, so you know. All they wanted was my recommendation in the first place, and to know that I had gone over their situation and had a plan. And I put so many blocks in the way of them getting just that, so that I could feel important, or because I think they need that, or really, honestly, just for no reason at all. Yeah. We're really clearing the bullshit out of our minds now. It's good brain detergent, I will say that. The flow of paying for something and getting what the person wants that they are paying for needs to have as few steps as possible blocking it. Yeah, it seems so simple, doesn't it? Watch you lean in and your whole business is just going to do a 180. It just sort of attunes you to the vibe of the universe. Everything has a grain. That's OP's same realization. Aligning yourself to the flow of what the market really wants, what people really want in the aggregate, is even better. I thought about a doctor who thought I was well connected and wanted to pay me a small amount to talk about his practice on Facebook and Instagram. I accepted, and then I griped about it. And when I did what he asked, he changed the terms and asked me to delete Instagram and send a message on Twitter instead. This all happened the night right before the trip. I was angry that he changed the terms, which made extra work for me while traveling, and I was going to get revenge on him by putting something negative out there and making a big deal about him being unethical, etc. And suddenly, all of that seemed really very petty, which it truly is. All he wanted was his business promoted and to pay for it, and I accepted that. And so, I should promote once I decided and promised to do so. So I did. And he was happy and paid double. Hey, less stress for me, less blockage of the flow of money from what he wants to what he paid for. I think we're taking away some good messages here. Although, you can't do this trip too many times, go seeking answers too often, or else you'll just become completely apathetic to everything. I think about 2, maybe 3 times is what you get before you're clinically insane, like legally. Anyway, I could hear Floor fighting with her boyfriend again. "I'm not banging him," she said. "All he's doing is crying and crying." I swear, he's just in there crying. Okay, bye. This section is titled, "The Trip Turns Bad." Yeah, Floor's bad vibes, dude, I'm telling you. I very suddenly had, in my vision with my blindfold on, a vision of a horse head, completely skinned and bloody, all muscle and fat and skin hanging off with eyes staring at me, and that shocked me. Oh boy, I thought, here comes a bad trip. From there, a background over my vision of bone fragments, blood, skin, eyes, teeth were everywhere, and I cringed. But I thought about, as I had been recently reminded, how I worked with a butcher and had lots of experience with dead animals. But these look human. I thought, I'm okay with this, and then it all went away. Going solo is the next section. I'm gonna leave as soon as I smoke this. I'm fine to drive. My boyfriend's super upset and thinks that this is like going over to a guy's house to do a line of coke and banging him. I'm never doing this stuff again, that's for sure. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Well, I'm sorry that it went poorly for you. I started rambling on and on about my meditations about money. Yeah, what's money and why do we even need it, she said. I told her that we need to not get in the way of money flowing for what people want to pay for it to accomplish. All I know is my boyfriend's super rich and he does all kinds of stuff, but he's really rich, so yeah, I can't piss him off. She exhaled and I saw the smoke coming out of her mouth, backlit by the window, and it turned into such a rich rainbow of colors, literally stripes of colors in the smoke. I told her that she was turning into Puff the Magic Dragon with her rainbow smoke, and she laughed. She hugged me, and I told her, thank you. I expressed to her that this felt like 10 years of therapy in one afternoon. I told her she had given me a gift. I know, she said. I still really don't like her. Everything is a metaphor, and everything has a grain. She left. I looked at my granite kitchen countertops and noticed that the visuals seemed to be gone. The grains in the granite didn't seem to be as interesting anymore. Next section is called Body Sensations. Yeah, we're definitely coming down now. I laid down and cried again. I tried to meditate and noticed that my back and neck were really stiff. My jaw had been clenching up throughout the afternoon. My eyes hurt, and I started a body scan meditation and tried to relax, imagining my whole body calming down. A voice in my head said, well, of course your jaw and eyes hurt. You've been crying for hours, and you have a knot, like the knots you saw in the trees. and that knot is right in the middle of your forehead. I reached up and felt the dried blood from falling early on in the trip. Oh, I forgot about that. When are you going to see that everything bad are really things that you just do to yourself? Everything you do to nurture or harm any cell in the grains of your body is like that. It damages or repairs itself depending on how you feed the grains. I know, I say. I know. And I feel very humbled and stupid. I realize suddenly that I'm holding on to things tightly and causing my own neck and back pain. And it's a metaphor for what I need to let go of. Yeah, it seems super simple at that point, but then once your system's clear, it gets a lot harder. I vowed to sign myself up for a yoga class the next day. I needed to feel the grains in my muscles flow once more. I realized that what others call flow or energy during their trip reports, I'm experiencing as a grain, like the wood grains I saw earlier. I think grain is a much better way to describe it personally. Flow and energy, they're not tangible. The grain is tangible, even if you can't always see it. I vowed to call big brothers and become a big brother to a little boy who needed support to grow up like a leaf, big and strong, and not get nutrients from bad sources, and to only feed the grains of my skin with quality nutrients, and to wear more moisturizer and sunblock. Yeah, these were all very good thoughts to have. How many did we follow through with? I don't know, it could be all of them. You just reset your compass and all of a sudden lifestyle does a 180. I've seen it happen before. Hippie thoughts. Growing up in the universe means letting go of quote-unquote you. And that is a terrifying thought. Thanks, but no thanks. I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid.
There's a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with.
Walking is the next section. Later that evening, after sundown, I decided to do something good for my body. Get some exercise and think. My mind felt clear, but I did feel a little ADD, in that thoughts were scattering through my brain at what felt like record speed. I walked and found myself smiling at every tree that I saw on my walk. I learned something from a tree today, I thought. Amazing. I ended up walking over to a tree and giving it a big hug, smiling and wishing it well, and I thanked it for being part of the universe and for teaching me something. When I returned home, I saw via my phone that I had walked 7 miles, and I didn't feel it. Usually, after 1 to 2 miles, I get tired and feel it in my legs and the soles of my feet. Yeah, what a day. I readied myself for sleep. Sleeping. What a day, I thought. Yeah, again, as I tried to get to sleep. But I couldn't get to sleep, try as I might. I kept going over the events of the day and what I had learned, and I just felt sad for Fleur, smoking and arguing and not really getting any value out of this. I definitely felt different and felt that I had examined a lot. Was my brain different? Was my brain damaged? I mean, your brain will never tell itself that it's damaged.
All right, brain. You don't like me and I don't like you. But let's just do this and I can get back to killing you with beer.
It'll just carry on like normal. Sometimes using the wrong word for things, but otherwise completely normal. OP says, yeah, I could feel that my brain was different. I could look back at all the patterns I was stuck with in the old brain and see that this was clearly an improvement. We'll all agree to that. No matter how much you actually hold on to, it does inevitably seem to improve you in some type of way. That is, if you don't, veer off into schizophrenia land. Well, you've had your warning. Finally, at 5 a.m., I fell asleep, only to wake up at 6 a.m. for work. What, an hour? No, dude. All day I felt extremely tired, almost hungover, but with a more clear energy and no headaches like a hangover might give. I skipped yoga to sleep early that evening. The next day I felt clear and noticed I had lost 6 pounds. That made me smile. Yeah, not eating for a day because, you don't really get hungry when Uncle Sid's around. And then you went on a 7-mile walk. I believe that you could drop 6 pounds. Please make sure you drink some water, though, for God's sake. And hippie thoughts. It looks the same. It's the same grain, expressing itself. Familiar patterns, again and again. gives us a chance to learn, gives us a chance to do it right, or lets us do it wrong, again and again. Damn, that last hippie thought made my skin crawl a little bit. I hope I'm not doing it wrong. It feels like I'm doing it pretty right, but I guess these are the types of questions we need to ask ourselves, you know? Really long story, but definitely worth reading. I really did identify with the grain thing on the first perusal, so I hope that you guys were able to get something out of it as well. If you like content like this, like I said earlier, there's one other video with 2 trip reports in it. I'm going to link that on the end card to try and give it sort of a boost, so let's get to the end card. Usually I ask you to, subscribe on the Patreon or the YouTube memberships or check out my fourth wall, but we're not going to do any of that today. I want to get to that end card super fast, so I'll just say, remember friends, you are loved, you are worthy, you definitely deserve it, and I shall see you in the next one, so until then, bye-bye.